order. We have Pafford with us today. We appreciate them coming, and they have actually given me a breakdown. Do you have more copies of this, or? They've given me a breakdown of all of the runs that they make, and they've got them listed by city, with the percentage of how many runs that is of their total, is what it looks like. I may let them explain it a little bit more, but let everybody get a copy.
If you turn to the very last page, is probably the best reflection of that. Turn back one page. That's actually our yearly totals from 2021. So from January 1 to December 31st of last year. We responded to about 9,352 ambulance calls in the county, and 57.8% of those were in the city of Blytheville. 25% were in the city of Osceola, and then it goes on down. And you can see the percentages go down. And this is where the ambulances that are based at actually picked up patients from. So you might be confused by seeing a call in maybe the city of Memphis, but that was a patient that might have gone down for a procedure that came back to the hospital here, or was discharged after care and we brought back. So those are the exceptions that might look a little strange. Last year, we traveled with patients on board the ambulance within the county 113,957 miles. That was down about 36,000 miles from 2019. And a lot of that we attribute to COVID, just because we haven't been able to get beds for patients to be transferred to. But during that time, we've been working with the hospital hand in hand to find patient destinations, to find beds for ICU patients and med-surg. Jennifer Rebels and I have worked nearly weekly during the surges to help the hospital here find beds. So when you look at the response time that we've had overall, back in 2019, countywide, we had an average response time of 8 minutes and 24 seconds, which meant that we had an ambulance on the scene of a medical emergency countywide when you added all the calls up in 8 minutes and 24 seconds. We decreased that in 2021 down to 7 minutes and 54 seconds. So pretty significant decrease. We've added some resources. You know, we've added 1 and 2 ambulances to make sure that we're getting to patients faster so that we can have better clinical outcomes. The front page, when you look at it, just to kind of give you an overview of it so you can look at it, it talks about our call volumes in the first box. And if you notice in 2019, we responded to 8,398 calls. And then when we fast forward to 2021, we responded to about 9,352. I don't want you to be confused with that number, that's how many patients we transported, because nearly 30% of the patients that we're responding to today are not being transported to the hospital. You know, they want us to check them out, they want to be evaluated, and so forth. They want to stay home. They have no intent to go to the hospital. They're calling us out to provide care in their home, which we receive zero reimbursement. We don't get $1 if we don't transport the patient. So definitely a significant cost to us, and we put that together with our cost of readiness. The most expense we have in providing ambulance service to you is having the ambulance and the staff ready to go at a moment's notice. That's where our true costs are in the ambulance operation. So when you go down then and you look at the transports, you know, it takes you down from year to year about the transport of the mileage, and then the time on task. And something I'll point out here, from 2019, it took us an average of 28 minutes to drop off a patient at the hospital in 2019. We've increased to 37 minutes and 51 seconds in 2020, and 36 minutes and 40 seconds in 2021. It might not seem like a lot of time, that where we're waiting in a hospital, waiting for a bed, we don't have those ambulances back on the streets in Mississippi County. So that's part of the reason that we had to increase the number of ambulances available. So we'll go down to the 2019 data, and we'll walk you through that. You'll see the average response time by community and the percentage of calls that we responded to across those areas. I know that there's some specific questions about some of the southern part of the county. And in particular, we'll talk about Wilson and Joyner and that area. Less than 3% of our call volume that we respond to is in that region. So 97% of the calls that we respond to countywide are in other parts of the county. It's a very small percentage. In fact, last year, we transported an average of about 8 patients from Wilson, 8 patients from Joyner, and 3 patients from Dice a month. In an entire month. So that's 24, 26 calls that we responded to, or that we actually transported out of those communities.
So you're saying the response that you had 185 adults were actually you responded to, but you only transported?
About 75% of those were transported.
Okay, gotcha. Wow.
So you don't have like specific data on that? I would think so. It's something y'all would like to know. That's where you're losing money, right? And you're not transporting, so y'all
So
actually.
we've done a deep dive in that. We definitely, and it's patients that are originally in 2019, 2020 were patients that were afraid to go to the hospital. They were sick at home, but they were afraid of getting COVID. And it was not just patients with COVID-like symptoms, it was people that were having chest pains, diabetic problems, difficulty breathing. You know, those patients stayed at home. Our hospital census went down during that time, if you remember, and many hospitals laid off staff during that time period. We didn't, because our volume continued. We were the safety net of the community here because we kept responding out there, taking care of those patients, and many times begging them to go to the hospital. Because it wasn't just one time that we were going out to their house, it was 2 and 3 and 4 times. And things definitely changed over the course of time because people became ill from COVID and they became comfortable with going to the emergency room, and our volumes came back up. So that's really where that is people thinking that they can call us, we're going to evaluate them on us, and we're going to provide some type of treatment so they don't have to go to the hospital.
And that's not just in Mississippi County, that's pretty much across the state. I mean, so I'm definitely not throwing stones because we work so well with the facility here. But one of the things about the ambulance industry as a whole is that they have just not stopped, and our workload has increased, but yet the reimbursements for those haven't increased. And so that's been a pull, and I know that's something that our industry is working with the governor with and the health department to try to shore up those calls that weren't reimbursed during this COVID period, some things that we're working on like that. But I'd like you guys, our manager here, Charles, I just wanted to talk a little bit because we have beefed up what we're doing, and he's done an excellent job of finding folks that want to take care of our Mississippi community.
Our initial staffing was less in 19 and 20. Currently today, right now today, in this county, we've got 7 24-hour trucks. They're all ALS, and they're running the calls in the county. That's what I have staffed today, tomorrow, next week, next month. We're running 7. And if the call volume, if we get down to the point that the trucks are running and they get to the hospital and they're getting held up in the hospital because there's no beds. So the hospitals are full. We're working with Felicia and the 2 hospitals here. If it gets to the point where we've got extended wait times and long times because the patients, we don't have anywhere to put them there on the bed, we're adding trucks and adding additional staff. I have 9 ambulances here, physically here, and I've got a long list of PRN people from here, from this county, that will come in at a moment's notice and come in and go to work. And we have hired, we just upped the staffing. I get nothing but support from these people. I call and I said, hey, I need a truck. The next day I have a truck. I need this, I need a stretcher, the next day I have a stretcher, because the need is still here, and as the need increases, we have stepped up and met with staffing, with equipment, and whatever the hospital needs too, because all of us that work here, we live here, this is my family, this is my mom, my dad, my brothers, my sisters, and all of my people here work here, and Mr. Rick there, he rode an ambulance a long time, everybody becomes family. And our staffing has upped to meet the need, and the need is rising, and the numbers show that. The numbers show that the need is there. And whatever we need to do to take care of the people, that's what we're doing. It comes first.
When we came here, we were doing 5 trucks. When we very first started years and years ago, we only had 5 trucks in the whole county.
Covering the same area?
Yes, sir. And so we had 3 in, Blyville and 2 in Osceola, and then we added the additional trucks, in Blyville, as well to the 4th truck, and then we've added a day truck, part-time, and so and that's how our contract is written, it is not specific to a number of trucks, but it's to take care of business. And that's what I hope that you find that we're doing our best to take care of business, for your community. We just kinda wanted to give a report today. We know we weren't at the last meeting. We have encouraged, we come up monthly and we meet with Blyville, Fire Police and EMS committee. And then we do the same thing out at the hospital, and we meet with the hospital staff. Now, Charles, he does it all the time with them, but we try to have a moment where that they can tell us if they're having any issues without him in the room and with him in the room, so that we're addressing all of their concerns and that they're being heard. And I personally, we talked about this months ago when we were in front of y'all, we have to do the same thing for the county. Y'all are my customer, I want you to be happy, and I want the citizens of this county to be very confident in the ambulance service that's here for them. So that's important to us. And so making that happen and being heard and making sure that we're addressing your concerns is something we wanna be able to do. And we've told Rick, and we're gonna talk to him offline to make sure that we can make that happen, that we're very transparent with all of our other communities. They ask for reports, they want reports, that's fine with us. That machine prints off at 3 a.m. every morning and dings on my phone. So it's no problem to provide that type of information to y'all. And go to the proper channels because of security concerns, but for the most part, we can be very transparent with what's going on in the county, and we can give y'all quarterly reports if that's what you want, or be present whenever you ask us to come and be before you. So we're accessible by phone. Charles is here, Jennifer comes up monthly, I can be here when you want. I just want you to know we're accessible, we wanna be your provider, we have been for quite a long time, we know our contract is secure in the fact that we're supposed to be here for a while longer, and we're just here to take care of business.
So the biggest concerns that started a lot of this process was the response times in the south end of the county. And on your own, numbers here, it looks like it's double what it would be in Osceola or Luxor even. Do y'all have any intentions of trying to improve that response time in the south end? And if so, if you have intentions of trying to improve, do you have a plan to do so?
So we've had discussions about that, and with the help of the county, we feel like that we could possibly, station an ambulance down there for the part of the day. Like, in other words, it still would be an ambulance that's in the system in Mississippi County. It may sleep there at night, it may be housed there, at a local station, but it's still part of making the other 9,000 calls. It's not going to sit and wait on that 3%. But that Pafford is willing to work with the county, and we can figure out something to be able to do that. But I would have to have assistance of some sort to do that. As you can see, there's not the call volume to do that, so we would have to figure out some way to make that happen if that's what you guys wanted to do.
Well, have you put together a proposal or anything?
We did, just a few months ago, we put together a proposal and thought that we could do that, in the southern part of the county, with the county's help with buying some of the equipment. I want to address your response times too. I live in Hope, Arkansas, actually south of town, about 7 miles, and I live in the country. I absolutely love living there. Love the lifestyle that I have in the rural area. But I understand that if I call the ambulance, or if I call the sheriff or the fire department, it's going to take them about 15 minutes to get to my house. But I love living there, so it's one of the risks that I take. One of the things that you look at here and you see that Wilson, we have a 14, we're having a 14.
You're right.
We have a 12-minute and 50-second response time to ambulance calls in that community. That's about 4 minutes more than our average across the entire county when you look at it. So it's a little bit higher. but when you look at the ambulance industry averages, that's pretty good. I mean, that's not a bad response time to get an ambulance. That's a better response time than what you would see in some metropolitan communities like Memphis or larger cities. So it's not terrible. What we're really concerned about is once we get there, to be able to provide the very best clinical care. We want to make sure that patient has a good outcome and that they have the paramedics and EMTs that have the right equipment to be able to take care of them in the ambulance and then get them to the hospital that they need to go to.
So all these numbers are average numbers, and you're right, 12 minutes is not bad. It's the outliers that cost lives, the 30-minute and the 40-minute response times, and I'm not in y'all's industry, and I don't know how to answer that, but how to best protect against those outliers.
Let me tell you, just to be very frank with you, there are a few outliers, but we look at taking care of everybody in the county as a whole. Every member and every citizen here in Vistor, Mississippi County deserves to have the same level of ambulance service. The only thing that might be a little bit different is the distance from our ambulance station to their home. But again, we got to look at the clinical outcomes. And are we going to have some 30-minute response times to some of the areas? We sure are. I mean, and there's no way around that. But out of all the ambulance calls that we make, so few are outliers. It's a shame though, because those are usually the ones that we hear about. They're the ones you hear about.
When you lose a life, that's what you're going to do.
Right, and then I think that it's important that we have a strong system, a support system from the fire departments, and that we're able to help with training, whether it's additional equipment that they could possibly have, whether it's from an AED standpoint or things like that. How can we beef up that system as well? Because our first responders are very important to us in all of our communities, and being able to access them, help train them, and then work hand in hand is very important. You can speak to that as far as how well that goes through. I know this is something that we've tried to beef up and had a little bit of resistance in the south end of the county with, but would like to make that better. But I think that that's also, the ambulance is not always going to get there in that type of fashion, and it doesn't matter if you're in an urban area. You still need people around you that can perform CPR and to take instructions over the phone and be willing to help, and that's anywhere. I mean, we all need to be able to do a helping hand, and that's why it's so important to have volunteers in the service areas that want to help respond and be a first responder that we can help train and we can help provide equipment with, that will help us build up that whole system, that can report to the ambulance, this is what's going on with the patient, this is the condition of the patient, and whether they have them stabilized or they're helping with CPR at that moment. Those are all things that we need to work towards making better, and that will help build our system and the system that we take care of our communities with.
If we, Mississippi County, decided to work and set up a county-sponsored first responder program, we used to have one that's kind of fallen by the wayside. But do you know other counties that have a county-sponsored first responder program in which y'all help provide certain training or whatever?
We actually provide medical direction for those. So we provide the physician oversight, the medical protocols, the quality assurance. We have systems where we do all that so that everyone's on the same page, whether it's the fire department in Joyner or whether it's the fire department in Osceola or Blytheville or any of the other communities. We all know what protocols we're operating under, and it's the same medical director, it's the same group that's working together. So it's a great opportunity. We'd love to have that opportunity here.
What were you going to do?
We actually have a couple of counties that we're working with right now that are actually in the middle of those first responder classes. And so it's 1 or 2 nights a week for 4 or 5 hours a night. And then we do a CPR class with them. They go through extrication. They go through all of our medical direction. It takes about, I don't know, 6 to 8 weeks by the time that we finish it. And then it gets it to where all of the first responders, and the counties they're big counties like this one. They have a lot of small rural fire departments that have come together, and they have 32 people in that class right now. And we have some of our personnel that come in, and they teach everything. We come over and do a big day of CPR. Everybody gets mannequins. We teach them hands-on, and so it's really a way to be able to pull those first responders together to train them with our medical direction, with our employees, because our employees are there helping too, so that they understand where things are and why they're there and what we need. And oh, we use a sea caller, okay, well, let me grab one of those. So we reimburse what they're using on scene and being able to work together to be able to provide that service.
I've actually been a certified first responder through the Manila Fire Department, in younger years. But it has kind of fallen down.
And volunteerism across America has
It
fallen
has.
down, and that's the sad thing. And then you also had COVID where people backed up, and you didn't want to expose yourself to that as a first responder. And so I think it's just time for us to grab our bootstraps and reevaluate the situation and who we have that wants to help and wants to be a part, and then we go forward like that. And it's always not always putting an ambulance in the spot, but it's taking care of that resource and managing what you have properly through these type of channels. But I'm hopeful, I'm very prayerful that the tide is going to turn. We can see a silver lining. We all either have some type of protection at this point in time to be able to go out and serve the people as volunteers and things like that. So I think we'll see that change, and that we'll start to have the volunteers and come back is the hopeful part. I mean, I think everybody wants to help, but they don't want to get sick. And we don't want to get sick either.
Well, and if I could speak on this just for a second, I have a front desk, agent that is a certified first responder, just by happenstance, and we had a problem the other night at the hotel. And so she was able to evaluate our guests. We did call the ambulance, but she was able to give them some knowledge once they arrived. From the time they called to the time they pulled off the parking lot was a little under 25 minutes. So she called, they got there, they got this woman in there, she had had a stroke, they were able to give her vitals, all that, they put her in the ambulance and took off. So I think without her being there, it would have been a much longer time. I mean, I think those first responders and being on the scene, whether they're there before the ambulance or not, really does make a huge difference in the time they're talking about.
I think our county resources might be better spent, rather than buying another piece of machinery, another ambulance, in developing a new countywide first responder, maybe county sponsored program. I'm not saying necessarily county funded, but a county sponsored program where we had a central head or central person responsible for training. We used to have a guy named Kevin Jackson that was wonderful, and Kevin moved on, and we've never replaced him.
I think that's what the problem is, even in Mississippi County. I don't think the issue is volunteerism so much as not having that,
Organization.
the organization, having some sort of spearhead person that's actually keeping all the balls going in communication between all the different groups.
I think, speaking with Rick, I think that we can do that. You know, folks know that we have the support, we have your support, we're doing this, and we're making things better. Then we have the fire departments that we can have monthly meetings with. Everybody has their different meetings, different nights, but we can start beefing that up, and Charles taking the lead on that and making that happen, and that's just what needs to happen. Period. Regardless of anything else.
I have a question about the data, didn't you do the phone calls? Is that, if I remember that from the last meeting? So the response time, that's still based on when does that clock start? So I think that was some of the question in the last meeting that Dr. Cullum's argument was, is that he felt like that those numbers weren't truly what was actually happening, but we were wondering if the gap was between when you get the call and the sheriff's department.
It's when our phone is picked up. That is when it starts.
So the time frame when someone calls 911, if that 911 operator is taking 5 or 6 minutes worth of information, then they're not actually dispatching you for that. That 5 or 6 minutes is not included in this time. Is that correct?
That would be correct, but let me tell you, the call transfer times here have always been very short. I mean, and then a lot of times the operator from here will get the information as we're getting it.
So you have access to that data as well from the moment that the call comes in
We
to
don't.
the 911 as opposed to when it comes to you. So there's no way to know what the response time is.
So Jennifer and I both have worked in the communication center, and I've answered 911 calls for a dozen years here in the county. And just knowing when we answer the phone and it's Florida police on the phone, they are transferring the call to us when they say we need an ambulance. And then they will get the information as we're getting it a lot of times. So it's not like they're taking a bunch of information and asking questions. They're getting that call to us because we're the experts in taking that ambulance call, and we can provide those pre-arrival instructions.
I hate to say this, but yes, like when they called the ambulance the other night, they said, I don't know, certainly don't think there's any kind of special treatment, but we don't call for an ambulance very often, especially at night. We have to guess and think that we need an ambulance, and the ambulance, they came on the way.
And I think that was
part of the misconception with Dr. Cullum is he was mad because they kept asking all that information, but he was not realizing that they'd already dispatched an
Can
ambulance
I
during
answer,
that
can I
time.
answer that? So, we just this week, actually last week, we were awarded the 299th ACE accreditation in the world for 911 centers. We met the gold standards of the International Academies of Emergency Dispatch. We've been audited and checked for 2 years to get to that level, to make sure that we're providing that gold standard of care. 299th in the world out of about 47,000 dispatch centers that provide pre-arrival instructions. So we're following those standards. When you call and you have an emergency at your home, you want immediate reaction. And the best thing that we can do is get that first responder, which is our emergency medical dispatcher, to give instructions to you, whether it's going to be bleeding control, CPR, we're going to do the Heimlich maneuver. You want that direction while the ambulance is coming. In our center, when we answer that call, we're going to get that address first and the chief complaint, and another person in the room is popped up on their screen. They've got the address and information. They're paging the ambulance.
So then the disconnect is the person on the phone's like, just send me an ambulance, and
Right.
they don't realize that they've hit the button, and it's
Right.
transferred over from a call taker to a dispatcher. The call taker is still taking the information, and ma'am, is your husband breathing? Is this going on? Does he have a pulse? And tells them how to do all that. But the ambulance has been dispatched, and I joke around with them, but they know I'm serious. I'm like, if you would, and they say it, but we're all so wrapped up in the questions that are going on. Is, ma'am, I have an ambulance on the way. I have some more questions, and I'm going to give you some instruction. That is the pause that I've encouraged our dispatch center to make sure that they're taking that moment in time and saying, ma'am, hang with me. I have dispatched an ambulance. I have more questions. Now, Dr. Cullum and other medical professionals, they get aggravated because we're asking questions. They don't understand it doesn't. Although I've tried to tell them, would you please just make it pop on the screen? It's Dr. Cullum. Somebody go take care of his problem. But it doesn't work that way. We follow the guidelines.
And on our end, okay, the phone call comes into dispatch. They hit a tone that comes across our speakers right down here. And we go to the truck. The state requirement is the truck's gotta be rolling in 2 minutes. It's gotta be rolling in 2 minutes from the tone.
It doesn't matter if it's
so
right now or 3 in the morning.
I climb in the truck and we take off. On the screen in front of me, all of the conversation, the questions they're answering are being typed. I see them being typed on the screen to get my information on the way to the house. So it's dispatched from the time that call comes in. So there are times, and I'm gonna tell you, it's every day. I pull up at a house and I climb out and it's still, the dispatcher's still on the phone and that information is still being fed in because they start giving symptoms and everything. It's all online and it's timed, but the truck has been en route the whole time.
And the reason it's so important is, especially the doctor's office, when they call in for something like a cardiac arrest, we need to know, is it a child we're coming to get? Because we have pediatric equipment. We have different bags in our ambulance that we need to come running into the clinic with, or is it an adult? Is it a 47-year-old female that we need our adult equipment? We need to have that ready. And the paramedics also need to have a game plan as they're arriving. What hospital are we going to? Do we need a helicopter? What services is this patient going to need? That helps them every minute that they're en route. They can plan to take better care of that patient.
Yeah, because a lot of times, as this stuff is populating, I reach over and grab that mic. Please get me a helicopter available. And then they'll pull up where the truck is, where do you need it to land? And in some cases, when you get down to Frenchman's and Pearl and the far reaches of the county, the helicopters can actually be this thing. And they do.
When I was working with the police department, I ran the 911 dispatch center. We actually took the calls and then we transferred it to ambulance service, fire, whatever. Usually they picked it up and the biggest problem was getting someone to calm down enough to tell you what their emergency was. It was what they needed. If people don't realize if they, that can take 5 minutes right there. I don't know what to send you. I can send an army if we need it, but we gotta know what we need.
I think if y'all would just work with us and let's devise a plan that we feel like going forward will help strengthen the service that we have here, we'd like to do that. And just give you some comfort that we are taking care of business, we are putting more resources in your community. And we have touched 9,300 residents this year. That's a lot of people. You guys know the population, but that's a lot of people throughout the county. And, we're gonna continue to do that, whether they go to the hospital or not. We always encourage that. One of the best assets you have is your local facilities. And we wanna utilize those. So, thank you for letting us show you that today and just chat a little bit about it.
I have a question. Your trucks, you said you had 7. Where are they located throughout the county?
So in Blyville and Osceola, and I have a brand new station in Osceola. Look, everybody says it'll be done in 6 weeks. I've heard 6 weeks 3 times, and I looked at it today and it's at least another 6 weeks, so. if
Is it a
somebody-
courthouse or is it?
You know what I'm talking about?
Move that, Mr. Chairman.
I was really disappointed, and today when I pulled up, I'm like, this thing ain't done, and so put the cookies up,
Okay,
the
hold on.
coffee's not coming out yet.
It'll be done in October. We just don't know what year.
We're gonna grab a hammer and nail ourselves, and finish that, so we're very excited, we're finally getting the folks out of the little bitty station in Osceola, and they're getting a much larger station, and to give us the ability to have some room there.
Great big training room for education for first
So they
responders.
can come
So
there.
how many trucks did you have in Blyville, how many in Osceola?
So 4 and 2. Well, I mean, historically, it's been 4
I
and
thought we had
2.
7.
We do, but we've
Seven
added the extra truck here recently, and it's in Blyville because that's where I have more beds.
Well, now you got 5 and 2.
And if the call volume drops down 100 or 200 calls, then I will take that truck back, but I don't have to now. I mean, it's there and it's working hard. And the negative of that is making calls that are not generating revenue right now, but we're answering the call of service. That's what it is.
Y'all are working in multiple counties that have first responder programs set up. I'd like to pursue, Mississippi County may be doing that, and we're all kind of new, even though it's been years since I've been involved. Can you help us provide a model of what a county program might would look like, or a county sponsored program might would look like?
Hands down, been more than happy to do that personally for you.
The contact would be Justice Ash and Wayne Reynolds, our emergency services person.
Ma'am, I would like to just clarify your question, because I don't think we fully answered your question earlier. Because you're thinking, why is there 5 in Blyville and why is there 2 in Osceola? One of the big reasons is there is 57% of the calls from the Blyville area. But we'd love to have that 3rd ambulance down in Osceola to help when they're busy down there. But our garage and our sleeping area only will accommodate 2 ambulances. The new station, the new station actually has 3 ambulance bays. And it'll have enough room, but it's gonna be a wonderful facility.
And our ambulance spends a lot of time posting. We post trucks when trucks go out. Then
I've
we
seen
move
y'all
them
sitting
around.
at Bird Ed.
Yeah,
on
when we move
61.
it
I think
down.
they live there, they'd like a porta potty every now and
I
then.
have a question, so you have 2 in Osceola and you have 5 in Blyville, but 2 are not always stationed in Osceola, correct?
Yes.
So the ones I always see when I'm driving down 61 every day and I see 2 or 1,
It's most likely from
That means
Blyville.
that means that
So
we're busy.
they're in Blyville.
Well, it means, like you said, it means we're real busy and somebody had to post somewhere in the county because all the trucks.
So let me clarify posting, so
Yeah.
we use that term pretty commonly in our industry, but if Osceola would have 2 ambulance calls at the same time, and those ambulances are out on calls, we're going to bring one from Blyville at least halfway to cover while they're gone, so we have an ambulance closer to that area. If, for instance, Blyville would be out of ambulances, we would do the same thing. If Osceola had 2 ambulances in, we would bring 1 ambulance up to help. We also use the emergency squad here. We have a great relationship with them. They're great people, and they've done a really good job of working with us for many years. So we also lean on them when we have excess calls.
And that's where the 7th truck came in, is that we were having to call them more. And they're volunteers, just like what we're talking about, and we were really needing the additional resources. So once we were able to capture the actual number of calls, whether we were missing or that they were having to call the rescue squad on, then we're like, okay, we've got to add an additional resource, and that's where the additional truck came from.
One of the other things that has been a key factor for us as employees and personnel to be able to work in the ambulances. And I'll let Charles speak to this, but the college here and the one in Jonesboro has helped us basically raise our fleet of people to be able to staff that many ambulances. There was a time when we couldn't staff that many people. And so we're very fortunate with the relationships that we have with those colleges and, to be able to recruit them to work right here at home. So,
Yeah, one of the nicest EMS training facilities in the state right out here at the college.
You touched on something a minute ago I'd like for you to explain to you, because there was discussion about transfers, and you explained just a minute ago that in order for an ambulance to operate in Mississippi County, it has to be licensed by the state, the health department,
Yes, sir.
to operate in this county.
Correct.
So,
Unless we call and ask them to come help. And we do that often. If there is not a closer ambulance, then we call and ask. Did you want us to follow up on one of those questions?
Well, I was just looking at, like, I mean, when you said that, like, in the south end, you know, it's only 3%, but I'm just basing on the population of those small towns. 3%, I mean, would still be a lot compared to Blytheville, because Blytheville's population is a lot, you know, based
You
on
mean
the
the
number of
people that we picked
responders.
up,
Yes.
like 300.
Yes, so, like, I mean,
It's still a
Wilson is
lot of
only
calls.
900,
Yeah,
yes, it's still a lot of calls for
it's
that
a lot of
small
calls for that
town.
community, and
Yes.
it's the age population and things like that, so that the need is there a little bit, so they're just as important as everyone else in the county, just realizing that overall, where you need your assets, because I can guarantee you, if we move a truck and we leave a truck down there, and it only makes those 300 calls a year, and we upset, up the road, and we don't have enough staff up the road, then we're going to have way more complaints, more like a 20% complaint market going on up the road if we're not covering that. Like, we just leave that resource down there and not do anything. It's just gotta be part of the system, and I think that our goal is to be mindful that y'all want some attention down there, and how can we make that happen? And like I said, you know, since we've been talking about this for the past 2 years, the times have gotten better. Yes, there are instances where the ambulance is not, it may be posted, and we all may be busy, but like what the justice was saying is that we have the ability to call and ask for help, and I know our dispatch center does. If we're all tied up and all ambulances are busy and all hands are on deck, we will call and ask another ambulance provider, do you have a resource close by? Can you provide mutual aid? And if they can, they will. If they can't, the tornado the other day, we were having our Christmas party, and at a moment's notice, I think y'all put up like 7 or 8 ambulances.
Yeah.
In addition, I mean, like, we had what we had, and then they were able to put up additional trucks to go help.
We had 82, there were 82 people signed in at our Christmas party. We put them all on. I climbed on a truck, I responded, and I was one of the first people into the Monette nursing home. We had 3 ambulances at Monette, and still we're covering all of our calls here. The trucks were there, and obviously the staff was there for the Christmas party. Tornado come through, and this isn't the only time. That kind of stuff happens. Just like, okay, when we have something go out, and Clay monitors this stuff in a leadership thing, and he's like, okay, the ice storm this week. Guys, 8,000 phone calls probably in the last 2 weeks. This is what we need. This is what we prepared. Supplies are coming. I rated the stores. I've got enough food to feed an army at both bases.
And staff will probably come in tonight versus waiting till Thursday morning to come in, because they might not be able to get it. So those are all things to do.
We offered hotel rooms to the people. If you live more than 5 or 10 minutes away, we'll get you a room here. If you can't get to work, we'll send an ambulance and come get you. Whatever we've got to do to take care of the people here, because it's our families.
What you wanted or not? Did
I
I get
have
what
a
you wanted?
question.
Yes.
She's looking at me because I was in Leechville the
Yeah.
night of the tornado.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, I went with Connie, my wife,
Mm-hmm.
and we got flagged down the middle of the street with the second tornado coming. Had one with closed head trauma and one with an abdominal injury. We requested an ambulance, and I'm saying this because we need a better communication system in that situation.
We do, and we identified that is an issue, because the different
Because
departments, your
a
fire
Pafford
department-
ambulance drove right by us. We moved them to the fire department.
Right.
Pafford ambulance drove right by us. We ended up getting an Arkansas Methodist ambulance 20 minutes later. And we had waited 30 minutes to see Pafford drive by. Now, the problem there was, I had seen 3 ambulances parked in one area, but we had no contact with them. The only way we could contact them was to call 911, they transferred us to y'all. And it was getting mixed up somehow. Do you have, or do y'all use the, I just lost the name. AWIN system.
Yes.
We just got approved about 3 or 4 months ago to go on AWIN, and we will be going company-wide on AWIN.
So that's a
So-
huge investment.
The sheriff's office, or even, I think the CD squad uses that. So they can go to your channel and call.
And we can actually then come to their.
You know, and I'm curious, did you call anybody the next week? I know it was a bad time, but did you call anybody the next week to talk about it? Like, did you?
I didn't, I knew I was gonna be talking to you shortly.
But realize, and so this is
a
the
delay.
thing we gotta do. When something happens the night before, I don't wanna know about it 90 days later. I wanna know about it 9 a.m. the next morning, or earlier than that, because then we're able to start addressing
We
those
might find
problems.
a lot then.
That's
Well-
fine. And
Don't give Dr. Cole your number.
no, you know what?
He's got it, won't call.
He's got the-
I'm not gonna answer him, you know why? Because he's got his number blocked and he looks like a telemarketer when he calls. He won't put his number on there, so I never did. But that's fine with me, because I don't like coming and having like 20 things that we didn't address. I would prefer him to know the next day and us address them. That's what I need.
And
I
I knew
need
that,
that
I
feedback.
knew that y'all already knew about it,
I need that
because
feedback.
I knew that, Brian Dunham was talking. to me
Brian,
about
yes,
it.
sir, yes, sir. I talked to
And
Brian
that's who I was
an
working
hour
with
ago.
that night, so.
One of the things years ago, you know, we have 3 VHF frequencies in the state for disaster response for EMS. Well, as people have come to AWIN and different radio systems over 20 years, heck, very few ambulance services even know that they're in the radio system.
Mid-South EMS radio check OCO, Mid-South EMS radio check.
5 o'clock in the morning, that was my job to answer, Central ECC. I had to get up every morning and answer Jacksonville, Pafford, Jacksonville.
Yes.
Out of all the counties y'all serve, which ones would be most comparable to here in terms of its rural, but it has propensity for high violent crimes and like really
Phillips County.
Phillips, West Helena.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's gotta be West Helena.
Yeah, we provide service for, Lee and Phillips County.
Do they have like a first responders program?
We do, we work with the fire department, it's there for a long time to do that, so.
That's a contract we've had, we actually talked about that today, that's a contract I believe we've had for 37 years. We've been in that community, and they are, you know, they're one of the communities helping us, with ARPA funds. They have issues with their hospital that we've been struggling with, you know, for the last year, and we've just worked closely with them with a lot of communication to just take care of the citizens. I mean, that's really what it's been about.
So that'd be the best model for ours.
So I think so. There's a few things that are different. So no 2 ambulance services anywhere that we serve are the same. So really, I can think of some other communities or other counties that we serve at different parts of a different state that better mirror some of the distances here. Because you have some great distances in the Commonwealth. So things are a little bit different than Helena and West Helena. It's a good example, but the system needs to be developed for this county.
Those counties are about 500 square miles, or right in that neighborhood, we're 975. So that does make a big difference.
You said something when you first started talking about it, this fact, how you would respond to a person that called in to let you know about, you'll get the name, the then send the ambulance on the way, and to calm them down, you would tell them. And that's gonna be the hardest job, to try to get them to do that, because they got their own way of doing it. Some people can get mad and hang up.
Right?
See,
We do call them back.
they-
We get it long enough to get that little number, hopefully, and a lot of times we'll call the dispatch center back, you know, like the sheriff's office, and say, hey, did you get that address, or did you get that number? And we'll share information there where we can call the patient back, or the, you know, the family can go, ma'am, we're sending an ambulance, can you tell us more about the
Maybe
patient?
not, it wasn't, not you, but I'm just gonna say, I called here in Blywood, you know, I'm in the church, and I right behind. Told them my name and everything else, that's easy to find. And so,
Didn't find.
They asking so many questions, like I done robbed a bank.
And that's the asking
No,
question.
that's the attitude those people, some people have, that no, he needs to be on that thing.
Yeah, they gotta say, click, we've got an ambulance
This
on the way.
is, it was here in my own hometown, I'm talking about.
Yeah. But that's not that person's hometown that's asking the question, so like, which Baptist church? You know,
I'm wondering, you just brought up a thing about the tornado, so I'm just wondering, is that a separate issue? Do they need to do
Okay,
something
you
with?
have to remember here, Emerson actually provides service west of the lake.
Right,
But they were pulled out as backup
yeah,
to
everybody.
Emerson.
no, I understand, but what I'm saying is, I mean, this was a disaster, emergency, what we planned for. Is that a separate issue that maybe needs to be addressed if it didn't work quite the way it was supposed to?
It is, and they're working on it in that the AWIN system is actually a statewide system. I know that I dealt with it just enough. They were fixing to put an AWIN radio in my car when I retired. Thank God I retired. But you could pick up an AWIN portable and actually talk to Texarkana on that radio, because it's a series of towers linked together. If they're getting AWIN radios in their ambulances, that should mean that the sheriff's office could pick up the radio and say, hey, I need an ambulance at this location.
And historically, everybody has a separate channel because they don't wanna hear the chatter
Right.
of each other, and that's why they're separate, and that builds that wall that we don't want, but we, wanna be able to have access at the same time, so.
Let me talk to you a little bit about a disaster, because the tornado's on everyone's mind right now, but we knew we were gonna have bad weather that day, and we had a briefing actually the day before about the weather system coming in which we talked with all of our managers. We had a Zoom call. That evening, we came into our emergency operations center. We were sitting in our office in Hope, and we were monitoring the weather system. And as soon as we knew we had a tornado on the ground and we saw the destruction and things, we immediately started making calls and started moving ambulances. We started with Helen and Marianna. We moved one of their ambulances from each community, started them this way. We started Woodruff County. We actually called our disaster response people in. They were sitting at our facility, and we dispatched a disaster trailer within 30 minutes of that tornado hitting the ground. So we were moving resources here immediately because we knew that we had a situation. And then about 5 minutes later, Emerson called and said, send everybody you can. And then about 15 minutes after that, the state health department called and said, do you have your resources on the way, and what do you need from us? So we coordinate things that we can way in advance so that we plan where we're going to get resources.
I'm excited. I just hired a guy from the health department that has a long history in EMS and the ambulance industry and in disaster management and some things like that, working with Adam and the DMAC team, and he started work yesterday for us. And so that just helps us beef up our system in all of our states. But we do try to man the weather, like we've had Zoom calls this morning and yesterday preparing for what's coming, just to take care of business. But we need to, and we are addressing, like you said, you guys are addressing what took place and how do we make it better, and the AWIN system is part of the answer, and it's going to be statewide. And in full disclosure, I do serve at the pleasure of the governor on the Arkansas 911 board. That's kind of a consolidation board that was put together a couple of years ago by the legislature, so I sit on that board as well. I'll be fine with City County Information.
I have a question. With the new increase down in Big River, 900 people, so are you looking at actually adding another ambulance to take care?
Well, I'd like to take care of them, but I think they take care of themselves for
Well,
the most part.
but with 900 people, that's gonna be quite a bit for.
And we'll continue to monitor that, just like we've had to add this
Yeah.
extra truck for this period. We'll continue to monitor it. Part of the bigger stations, we did the station before they were doing that, but having the resources.
Another thought back to your comment too about the small percentage for Wilson. If you think about when you're in a rural area like that, probably 100% of the time if there's an emergency, you're gonna call an ambulance. I live around the street from the hospital. I don't get my car and drive to the hospital. I get there faster than I make a phone call. And that's probably a lot of your reliable calls are that way. You know what I mean? Like, so that adds try to speak to your percentage a little bit.
We kind of wish people thought like that, but most people have the mentality to think that if they call for an ambulance, they can get in faster. And so they want an ambulance to come pick them up so that we can bring them into the ER.
They think that we have the golden VIP ticket to get them into a
And we don't.
Wow.
But can I tell you, we have a great relationship with the hospital system, with both campuses, and we work really hard with their ERs and making sure their patients are triaged and taken care of. So, but we wish more people thought like that. Yes.
Rick, if you'll work with us, we'll help devise a plan, and we're more than willing to come back and lay some things out, or some suggestions, and talk to some fire chiefs, and get them involved as well.
Well,
I'll be more than happy to do that, and what I'd like to do is get whoever your attorney is that does contracts with Jake. I'd like to, because he's had some concerns about the contract, and that he feels like we have a trust type thing. I'm not gonna step off in the middle of that. I'd like for y'all, the two attorneys, to iron that out. I'm gonna say that I've seen Pafford in action, the guy who got trucks here. I see him rolling every day, because I'm still out on the streets every day.
Well, we'll visit with him. We have, 14 counties in Arkansas. We serve over 25%. 20% of the counties and 30% of the population as of last night. I was awarded Faulkner County last night. Well, I'm sorry, I was awarded Conway, the city of Conway last night. And that's a large deal. So we're pretty first on contracts and that, and we'll get with him and make him feel comfortable about what the situation is.
Also moving forward, I'll contact all of the fire chiefs and the police chiefs in the county, put together a plan for first responder training, arrange it with our staff to teach, work with land sites at ANNEX at the college to make sure that it's all legal through the state, get them continuing education hours for whatever they need them for. And next meeting, I'll bring you back an update on those. I'll contact Rick and the other gentleman by email and keep you updated on our status with all of the fire chiefs, see if we can get the training going for all of the rural areas in the county.
I'll get you my email.
Yes, sir.
My personal cell phone number.
We've got a guy in Manila with another fire department, former fire chief, but, continuing EMT, certified EMT that does run periodically, enough to stay certified. Not as old as I am, but getting close, Don Money. I don't know if you know that. But Don's retired from as postmaster.
Yeah.
He's retired from the fire department, but he would be a real good guy to coordinate a program like this. He's been the training officer at Manila for 20 years. And certified EMT for probably 30 years.
Yeah.
And I think Don would be a real good contact and a real good.
Especially from Manila, because their environment is the city used for their EMT license.
Oh, they're probably one of the more active, outside of the reliable emergency squad. Probably one of the more active, first responders programs in the county. But Don could help with the whole county. He's got time and effort.
So,
Yeah. I'll get over with them as well.
Can you contact, do you have his contact?
I do.
Okay,
Yeah, I know Don, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is interesting.
I live here, but I wouldn't know.
Do you ever wonder, like, how did we ever get around without?
You want me to tell you how we used to get around with that GPS?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no, we drove down the street with a new officer in the car, we'd stop in the middle of the block. What street are you on, what street's behind you, what street's in front of you?
I've heard from concerns is that
But
they can
any other
find the
questions
house,
or
they're
concerns
just
you'd like
flying
to
down
address,
the ambulance, because they're just driving
Before
around,
you close, I have some, the judge wanted to point out.
you know.
So, the judge had another meeting, so he left, and right over there in front of the TV is one of the ventilators that the county has bought. I think we have 10 of them, and so he wanted me, I'm using his words here, to make sure everyone's aware that they're here and ready to be on loan to Pafford, if y'all need them. When, all the laws are, and everything's approved, the paperwork and all that stuff. So if y'all need them, let us know, we've got them. And if you justices want to see, that's one of the 10 we've got.
definitely, we appreciate that. We'll definitely put them to use, and, the ones that we are gonna use in the ambulance, we'll make sure and maintain those and have them certified, so that if we do have a disaster, or we have a COVID surge, that those are available. We actually have, probably more ventilators on our ambulances than all the hospitals do in our service areas. And during the COVID surge and crisis, we've actually had to loan some of our ventilators to the hospitals. So this will definitely be a true win-win for the community.
You mentioned about the, the GPS finding house and this and that. I will tell you this is, for a long time, I guess just in the rural areas, the exact street numbers, usually are off. For a long time, it said the Hampton Inn was located on the Air Force Base. And you can only imagine how mad that made people for a long, long time. Google and I talked a lot. Anyway, but one thing that I will have to, I hope people are watching, that I'll have to kind of give the city of Blytheville some credit for, is that they have really been trying to go around and get all the houses to make sure that their house numbers are large enough to be seen and that they're in a visible spot. And listen, I know, I'm sorry.
I got some from my rental houses, so they have.
Where I understand that seems like not an important thing with code enforcement, and they're like, why are you worried about my house numbers when all this other stuff is going on? This is a prime example of why your house numbers need to be
huge and lit. You need a light over them.
That's right. I'm not, I just
sitting
want to
out
point
next to
that
the
out.
driveway with reflector eyes.
Yeah.
So
Because especially, if you're driving, the GPS may give you a roundabout. It's going to get you within a block of that house usually. But then you're going to start looking for the house numbers. And if there's no house numbers and you have to back up 3 blocks to find a house number, I mean, that's life or death right there.
So, and that goes back to our interrogation questions, and I know that everybody doesn't like to answer those, but the first question we ask is, what is the address of the emergency? What city are you in? Is this a house, an apartment, or a business? And then when we're done at the end, we ask them, please turn on your porch lights. Please have somebody outside to flag down the ambulance. We need help finding you sometimes, and most especially at night when there's no lights on anywhere and you can't see anything. You're guessing because they're not on mailboxes.
Right. No, so, yes.
Well, I don't know.
I can tell you about a long time ago, GPS makes it a lot better.
It does make it a lot better, but it's not it's certainly
It's
not
not
a.
Perfect.
And you probably asked the Domino's thing.
So to identify a resolution of this meeting, we are not gonna buy a county ambulance. We're not gonna spend the money to do that. But we are gonna move forward with developing a county coordinated first responder program.
Yes, but we are going to discuss, I'm gonna be discussing something else with them because, I just talked to them before the meeting, because they pointed out there are other counties that are supplying ambulances. I wanna
I
find
just,
out.
I just
exact
told you
what.
about the 300 calls that we're making a month that I'm not getting any reimbursement from. And that's been a year, 18 months of that kind of stuff, and it's been very difficult on our business. ARPA money is there to help the citizens in the county. And we need to look at how it can best be utilized to provide better EMS service across the county. And I think if y'all would just give us a little bit of time, that we felt like we had an opportunity to do some version of that in Wilson and add some resources to the stack. That's what we need to do. So I think today, we gave you a really strong report of what's going on. Hopefully answer some of your questions, take some of your ideas back of what we need to do better and what we need to work on a little bit, and then be able to come back to your next go around and say, this is what we like. This is the best way, the best use of funds for the entire county, and go from there.
So here's the plan to improve
Yes, sir.
that we were asking about earlier.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, were you planning to add another, to the south end, like you're expanding on that building?
We talked.
So you have 7 now, so are you planning to put 3 in Seal and still 5 in this,
No, it's going to be based on the call volume. The call volume doesn't change, so it doesn't need an ambulance that sits there and doesn't generate, the revenue to pay the payroll, or you would be paying the payroll. If you choose for me to sit an ambulance in Wilson and it do nothing but, Wilson, you will have to pay for that ambulance, I can't do it. But together we may find a solution to help the south end of the county as a whole. And that's what we just like some time on. I'd like the attorney to be comfortable because we do it in other areas, make sure that y'all understand what it looks like. I have other counties that buy ambulances, Woodruff County, we have different counties across the state that buy equipment for us to use versus paying a subsidy, and that's the way they look at it. And, you know, so you can pay a subsidy and I pay for it, or you can buy the equipment and it's an asset of yours, and we utilize it for your citizens. That's it. It's a private-public partnership, and that's just what we're doing. So give us an opportunity to come back.
Yeah, because I think the majority of your concerns are in the south end, and if you're here to help out the community, then you need to hear what most of your concerns are, and really the south end. I think you guys need to give a little bit more attention to that south end, because a lot of your complaints are, I don't think you get many complaints from Blyville or Osceola as you get from the south end, so
We'll work on it.
as you're working for the community, I think that's where you need to focus on, and I think we'll have a better relationship.
We'll do our best.
Does anyone else have anything else that needs to come before the committee?
One last thing, do you have a time frame on approximate of when you might have a proposal? Like, are we talking 3 months, a month, 2 months, maybe? Just an idea.
I feel like that we should be able to report something back to y'all within 30 days, 30 to 45 days.
Okay.
Yeah, within reason.
I just wanted a timeline, it ain't gotta be.
Yeah, I don't want-
Not a deadline, just.
Yeah,
Once they contact me, I'll set up the meeting.
so I mean, by March 15th, we should be able to have it.
All right. Any other business we need to discuss?
Works fast.
We're going to be adjourned.
Thank you.